Hey guys, Carl from Purple Misplaced. Today I'm taking a look at Sonora from Pandasaurus Games, designed by Rob Newton. This game offers a unique twist on the recently popular roll and write and flip and write genre of games. Only in this case, instead of rolling dice or flipping cards, players are tasked with flicking discs onto a board in order to trigger scoring conditions. Disclaimer, I was given a copy of this game by the publisher for review, but with that being said, let's head down and see how the game plays, and I'll meet you back up here to let you know what I think. To set up a game of Sonora, begin by placing the game board on the table, oriented in such a way that each of the corners is pointing towards one of the players. The player who has been chosen as the first player should be sitting in front of the Cliff Dweller Ruins area of the board. Then each player will receive one scoring sheet, one dry erase marker in their player color, and then 5 discs in their player color, numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. As normal, I will be doing a solo playthrough in this video, but I think this time it will make more sense if I explain the general multiplayer rules first, and then I explain the changes that are made in the solo version. Before beginning a game of Sonora, the first thing you need to do is choose the length of the game. There are 3 different choices. You can play a short game, which plays out over 5 rounds, a normal game, which plays out over 6 rounds, or a long game, which plays out over 7 rounds. Aside from the number of rounds in each version, there are no other changes to the game. So Sonora will play out over the number of rounds that you've chosen, and in each round there will be 2 phases, a flick phase and a write phase. In the flick phase, players will take turns flicking their discs from their corner into the game board. The first player will flick 2 of their discs, followed by the second player, who will then flick 2 of their discs, and so on until every player has flicked 2 discs onto the board. Then this will go around one more time with each player flicking another 2 discs, and finally it will go around the table one more time with each player flicking their 5th disc. When flicking your discs, you're hoping to land your discs in one of the 4 different areas on the board. And each of these areas will allow you to score your discs in different ways on your scoring sheet during the write phase. In addition, there are certain bonus areas on the board that will trigger double scoring or double usage of your discs in the write phase. In addition, this center space on the board is actually sunken into the board, and if at any point your disc goes into that space, it is immediately removed from the board and set in one of the 4 scoring zones to be used during the scoring or writing phase. Other than that, while flicking, any discs that are moved when another disc hits them stay where they are for the remainder of the flick phase. Any disc that is flicked hard enough that it goes off of the board is disqualified from that round and is removed. However, if a disc is ever knocked off of the board by another disc hitting it, that player is allowed to flick that disc one more time to get it back into the board. Any disc that lands on its side or upside down will remain where it is and can simply be flipped face up for the write phase. Any disc that lands on a space in between 2 areas will be used for the area which is the majority of the disc is touching. So in this case, this 5 would be in the Cliff Dweller Ruins and not in the canyon space. If it does end up exactly between the 2, the player is allowed to decide which space they would like to use that disc in. Finally, while flicking, if the disc goes to a place that you do not like it to be, you will be given reflick abilities during the game, and every player starts with one of these. You can cross off one of these ability spaces on your board to immediately remove that disc and flick it one more time. So again, all players will flick 2 discs in the first pass around, and then one more time around with all players flicking another 2 discs, and finally one more time around flicking in the last disc. Once all 5 discs have been flicked onto the board by each player, you move into the write phase. Alright, so here you can see what a 2-player game might look like at the end of the flick phase. And you can see that I, as the purple player, did get my 4 disc to land directly in the center here. And so for that reason, I have removed it and I placed it over here in the mud cracks in order for scoring during the right phase. But before we get into that, let's talk about what each of the different zones on my scoring sheet do and how we translate what's on the flick board into our scoring sheet. Now, the first zone you always have to look at is the Cliff Dweller Ruins, and that is because this zone, and only this zone, is a competitive area between players. So what you're going to do is you're going to add up the total number of discs of each color to determine which player has the highest number in that area. In addition, I mentioned before that there are bonus spots. The bonus spots on the flick board do not correspond to the area that they're found in, but instead correspond to the area represented by the animal shown in the bonus spot. So in this case, the Cliff Dweller Ruins are represented by a lizard, the canyon is represented by this fox, the creek bed is represented by an owl, and the mud cracks are represented by a rabbit. So if we look on the board, there is a rabbit and a rabbit here. So both of these bonus spots are connected to the, mud cracks. The owls right here are connected to the creek bed. The foxes here and here would be connected to the canyon. And the lizards, which are here and here, are connected to the Cliff Dweller Ruins. So when you are counting up the number in the Cliff Dweller Ruins, you would also talk about any of the discs that are touching one of these bonus spots. And the bonus spots are all counted as 2. So in the case of the Cliff Dweller Ruins, if you have any disc that is touching one of these lizard bonus spaces, that number would be doubled and be included in the total count for majority in the Cliff Dweller Ruins. But in this case, the yellow player has 2 and 1. Remembering this yellow piece has a majority in the Cliff Dweller Ruins area. So this is counted here and not in the canyons. So again, the yellow player has 3, and the purple player in this case only has 1. So in this case, the yellow player would get to go first when writing on their scoring sheet in the Cliff Dweller Ruins. So in the Cliff Dweller Ruins, what you're going to do is you're going to cross off a number of hexes equal to the total number on your discs in that area. Which hexes you cross off is completely up to you. But if you manage to completely fill in any of these different buildings or different areas on this section, you will immediately score whatever is shown to the right of that area. Now, the reason this is a competition is because whoever is the first person to finish any of these areas will receive the top score, which is always higher. And in addition to the top score, will also receive some kind of ability that is unlocked when they score those points. From that point on, anybody else who finishes that area will simply receive the score at the bottom and therefore doesn't get the bonus ability either. However, there is one more thing we can do before we write anything on our board, and that is this second ability right here on the board. I mentioned before this reflick ability. Well, this is a swap ability. And after all of the discs have been put out onto the game board, you can activate any available swap abilities, and every player starts with one of these, in order to swap any 2 of your discs on the board. So for example, I as the purple player might use my swap to put my 5 here and my 1 over here. And by doing that, I now have the majority in this area. So I would write my numbers or cross out my hexes before the yellow player crosses out their own. So in this case, scoring as the purple player, I would take my 5 off of the board, and then I could cross off 5 hexes. So for example, I might cross off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, completing that area, in which case I now circle this 6 points at the top, and I'm unlocking one more reflick ability, so I would circle another reflick on my board. Later on, I could then cross off that reflick to flick one of my discs, again as mentioned in the flick phase. The remaining areas are filled in on the score sheet completely independent of each other. They do not connect to the other players. You are only filling in what your discs are on that spot onto your scoring sheet. So let me explain how the other areas work. Next thing I want to do is I want to look at the canyon. Again, the canyon is any discs that are in this section or any discs that are touching the fox piece, because the fox is the animal associated with the canyon, which again you can see on your score sheet, but is also seen here in the middle in that direction. So here we can see there's a fox associated with the canyon. So in this case, I as the purple player don't have any pieces in here, but this 3 right here is touching the fox. So now I'm going to be able to use that 3 twice in the canyon. Now, whereas in the Cliff Dweller Ruins, we would multiply our number times 2 in order to use it in that area. In this case, because the total number is not important, but each individual number is important, I'm going to be able to use that 3 2 times in the canyons. So the way that the canyons work is this. For every number that you have in that area, you're going to draw a shape that is connected to that number, or any of the shapes to the right of that number. So for example, in this case, I have a 3 in that area, so I can draw this shape, or any of these 2 shapes. Only one of them, of course. So I get to choose which one I draw. Now we're going to start off of this square that's already drawn on the board. And what I need to do is I need to circle a set of tiles or a set of squares in the shape that I've chosen to draw. And then any cactuses or cacti that are inside that shape, or any of these bonus scoring things like this owl or this reflick or this swap that are inside the shape that we draw, we unlock. And the way this is going to score at the end of the game is every time we circle one of these cactuses inside a shape, we're going to cross it off up here. And at the end of the game, we're going to score points equal to the number, or connected to the number of cactuses or cacti that we have in that column. So for example, if I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these, I would get 19 points. So you'll see how that works as we get into the playthrough later. But for example, the 3 that I just took, I could start from this square, going anywhere I'd like to, and I might, for example, draw this shape. And now inside that shape, there is a dark green cactus, so I will cross off 1 dark green cactus. And if we stayed there at the end of the game, that would be worth 5 points. So that's the canyon. However, as I mentioned, my 3 was on the fox bonus space, so I get to do that twice. And now I can draw any shape that I want to of that level or lower. So for example, I might take advantage of a single 1 space and draw this down here, meaning I get to cross off one of the light green cactuses or cacti on my board. That said, when you're drawing a shape, you must make sure that you're not ever overlapping a shape that's already on there. The shape must fit completely inside the border of these squares. And you can never draw a shape that's not connected to a shape that's already on the board. As far as the other bonuses on the board, we'll come back and talk about those at the end because those are the same in all 4 regions. So let's move on to the next region. The next region is this one over here, which is the creek bed, again associated with the owl. In this case, I have a 2 in that area. So what I can do is this. Looking at that section of the board, we're going to start where this X is, and we're going to cross off spaces equal to the number on the disk in that area. And each disk is going to be separate, which means if I land on one of these owl bonus spaces, it does not double my number, but it makes me have 2 of that number. So we're going to cross off a number of spaces equal to the number on the disk in that area, except that the last space will not be crossed out, but will instead be circled. And at the end of the game, we will be scoring points equal to all of the circled areas that we have. And anytime you circle one of the bonus areas, you immediately unlock that bonus. So for example, with my 2, I would start at the X and I would cross 1, and then I would circle the next one, which is now giving me 1 point at the end of the game. Finally, we have the mud cracks area. In the mud cracks area, again, connected to the rabbit icon, this time we are looking at the total number and not individual numbers on our discs, which means if you do hit the rabbit bonus, you are going to multiply the total number on that disc times 2. So if I had a 3 touching the bonus rabbit, that would become a 6 and not a pair of 3s. So you're going to find out what your total value is And then you're going to come down here and look at the mud cracks. And what you're going to do is, using the total number that you have, you can divide that in any way you want to, and you will cross off these numbered circles. Anytime you cross off a numbered circle, you then immediately connect that number to any other circles you've already crossed off. And when you're crossing off a number, you must be crossing off in a space that will create at least one connection to something that you've already placed on the board. Anytime you manage to completely enclose any of the symbols on the board, you will score them, or you will trigger the bonus shown. And at the end of the game, each of these purple cactuses will be worth 2 points, each of the blue ones are worth 4 points, and each of the green ones are worth 6 points. In addition, any number or any of the remaining number that you had that you don't use crossing off these circles can then be used to check off boxes down here in the corner. And if you manage to fill in any of these columns, you then immediately trigger the bonus at the bottom of that column. So for example, in this case, I only have a 1, which means I cannot cross off any of the numbers because the lowest number is a 2. But I could use my 1 to come down here and check off one of the boxes, hoping that later on I can fill that column and activate the bonus. At the end of the game, means after 5, 6, or 7 rounds, depending on which you've chosen, you will score your scores from all 4 of these areas, and whoever has the highest score is the winner. Now, let me talk about 2 more things. First thing, I want to talk about all of the bonuses on the board. Anytime you trigger a fox, you will see in the corner of this fox there's a number. This says 4. Same thing down here, this is a 4. Anytime you unlock one of those 4s, it means immediately in the canyon area, you are allowed to spend a 4 to draw a shape onto the board. Anytime you activate one of these owl bonuses, you're allowed to choose any number between 1 and 5 and mark off this area of the board as if you had placed that number on the board. So for example, if I decided to do 3, I could check off 1, 2, and then circle this 2 for points at the end of the game. Anytime you activate one of these rabbits, you will see all of the rabbits on the board have a number 5 on them. That means immediately you will have 5 points during that round to write in this area, or the mud cracks area, on your board, as you normally would. The other thing you will see are these swap abilities and reflick abilities, which I've already discussed. If you unlock one of those, you simply circle another one down here to use later. And these other ones that look like black rings will allow you to unlock one of these discovery bonuses. So when you get that, you will circle it, and then at any point from that point on, you can activate that ability to place, as I mentioned, the other abilities thus far. The difference being that if I get one of the abilities on the map, I must use it that round. But if I get one of these discovery bonuses, I can save it for a later round. In addition, the rabbits on the score sheet will give you 5 in the mud cracks area, but the discovery bonus rabbit will give you 6 in the mud crack area. Finally, at the end of the round, the board is rotated 90 degrees clockwise so that each player is facing a different zone on the board. And then again, at the end of your 5, 6, or 7 rounds, the total score is tallied for each of the 4 zones, and whoever has the highest total score is the winner. In the case of a tie, whoever has the highest number of these discovery bonuses unlocked will then win, and if there's still a tie, the players share the victory. In the solo mode, you'll be competing to beat your own high score, playing the game in a very similar way to the multiplayer game. However, in this case, rather than flicking only the 5 discs in your own color, you'll actually be flicking 5 discs of 3 different colors. So you will be flicking a total of 15 discs. After all 15 discs have been flicked onto the board, you will choose one of those colors to represent your discs. You will assign one of those colors to be the AI's discs, and the other color will be removed from the game for that round. In addition, the AI is going to use the discs that you've assigned to it to sort of block you in interesting ways on the scoring sheet to prevent you from scoring points. So let me explain how the AI is working on the score sheet, and then we'll get into our solo playthrough. So first, if we take a look up here in the Cliff Dweller Ruins, the AI is not going to be competing for points with you in this area. Instead, the AI is going to be marking off this area up here. In fact, anything you see on the board with this black square is going to be related to the AI. So in this case, for every number of spaces, or whatever number the AI's piece has in that area, they're going to circle a number of hexes in this area equal to that number. And then later, when you're placing your numbers there, you must cross off everything in this area that's been circled before you can cross off any of these hexes at the bottom. So the AI is basically taking away your ability to score by forcing you to cross off anything that has been circled at the top here. Next, in the canyon, the AI is actually going to be drawing shapes just like you do. Except the AI is going to start by covering any of these spaces that have that square shape on them. And then from that point on, the AI will play just like you do, where it will connect its new spaces to older spaces that it has placed. However, the AI also has the ability to jump over your shapes to connect new shapes on the other side of your shapes. So in this way, the AI will be blocking off sections of the map and preventing you from scoring different areas in this scoring section. Down here in the creek bed, the AI is actually playing quite similarly to you, except the AI is going to start down here at these spaces marked with the square. And the AI is just going to fill in or color in that many spaces equal to the number on its disk in that area. So basically the AI is just simply removing these high point values from your ability to score. And finally, over here in the mud cracks area, the AI is actually not going to be blocking anything directly in this section. Instead, for every point that the AI is marking in this section, they're going to fill in one of these circles around the outside of the board. And what that does is, for every circle that the AI fills in, it's going to increase the number required to cross out that area by 1. So if this, for example, this 5 circle here, if all 3 of those were filled in, I would need an 8 to cross that out instead of a 5. So the AI is not directly scoring, but instead the AI is going to be working to block you from scoring in the 4 different regions. The AI will always place or use its number as much as possible. It's going to use the maximum number it can. However, if there are more than one place that the AI could place their shape or cross off their sections, it is up to you as the player to decide where they go. So that means you can make choices that help you rather than hurt you in this case. And then at the end of the game, just like in the multiplayer game, you will add up your score in all 4 areas and record your score. And as you play every time, you're going to compare your score to previous scores and continuously try to improve and beat your old scores. So with all of that being explained, if there's anything I missed or anything you didn't understand, hopefully it becomes clearer in my playthrough. For my playthrough today, I will be playing the short version of the game, so we will be playing 5 rounds. So let me clean up and we'll get right into the playthrough. Okay, here we are all set up for the solo version of the game. We will be playing a short version of the game, which means it will go for 5 rounds. And as I mentioned in the rules, I will be flicking 15 discs, 3 different colors, 5 discs each. Now there is no specific rule about the order that I'm flicking these in or how I'm going to be doing that, so I'll probably change up the pattern a little bit as we play. Now because this is the first round and I'm the only real player in the game, you will see the Cliff Dweller Ruins are facing towards me, but again, every round that will rotate. With all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start flicking. In this case, I'm just going to do one of each color to begin with, and I might try my best to make... No, let's see. We'll just sort of flick the purple ones at random right now and see where they end up. And if I'm not happy with them, no, that's fine. So that could potentially be the AI. So let me see if I can score better with these yellow discs. right. And then finally I flick the green discs. Oh, I like that. Let's see what else we can do here. All right, so now all 15 discs have been flicked. Now I get to assign one color for me, one color for the AI, and one color to be removed for this round. In this case, thinking about what the AI does, the ones that the AI is most going to be in the way is for sure the Cliff Dweller Ruins, because I have to immediately cross off those hexes before I can place any scoring hexes. So I don't want the AI here. So I don't want to give the AI green. Also here in the canyon, the AI is going to compete quite a bit because they're going to start blocking off spaces, especially if they're big. So I don't really want to give the AI yellow either because that's going to be a nuisance. So looking at what's out here, I think I'm going to say the AI is purple and I am green. So I'm going to remove the yellow discs. And now we will score. Now the AI is going to score first in every round. So we'll start here first. The AI has a 3 in the canyon space. So starting at one of these squares on the board, I'm going to draw this 3 sort of S-shaped piece, and I get to choose where it goes. So I'm going to start down here with this. All I'm losing for that space is 1 owl bonus, and I'm going to cross it off like this so it's clear which ones are AI and which ones are my own spaces. I will just circle my own spaces. All right, so that's the 3. Next, we're going to move into the mud cracks. AI has a 1, a 2, and a 5, which together makes 8. So I need to fill in 8 circles. Now, my thinking in this case is, this is of course only the outside edge, which is where the highest scoring is going to be scored, but also it's going to take me a while to get to the outside. However, I think like to focus on a few of these spots and fill in all of the circles at those spots. So those spots are particularly hard to score, but the other ones are unaffected. So I'm going to fill in 8. And I will start up here in this corner and just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now reminding you that this means now I need a 9 to cross this, a 10 to cross this, and an 8 to cross this one. And finally, they've got a 4 in the creek bed, so I get to start at any of these bottom spots and color 4. And I think I will do that here, starting here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, meaning I can never activate those 4 spots for the rest of the game. All right, so now I've got mine left. So let's see what we've got. This is going to be 2 in the Cliff Dweller Ruins. I want to look at something that's going to score points, but also give me some nice bonus. And I don't want to pick anything too huge because I'm not sure I'm going to focus too much on the Cliff Dweller Ruins, but we'll see as we play. So I think I'm going to go down for this one down here that has a 7 number of spots. I pulled off a 2, so I will cross off 2 of those spaces. Next, I will move over here into the canyon. I have a 5 and a 1. And again, we have to start based on this square. Let me darken that so you can see it better. I have to build off of that. Now a 5 is going to give me this sort of C shape, and I like this right here, which scores me a dark green cactus and a brown cactus. So I'm going to cross that and cross that. And the other one that I pulled off, or will pull off, is a 1. So I get to mark off a 1 shape, which means 2 straight or a single square. Yeah, let's do this. I will take this 2 straight down here, which gets me one of the light green cactuses. All right, next moving into the mud cracks, I have a 4. So I get to place 4 in the mud cracks, and I will begin by, yeah, I might as well. I'll check off a 2. What is this? That's a fox. I check off a 2 and a 2. Means I connect this line and I connect this line. So far I'm not scoring anything down there, but that's okay. And finally this 3. This 3 is on a bonus. It's on the fox. So I get 2 3s for my canyon space. And the 3 again is this S shape if I want to use that shape. But I can use anything lower as well. So let's see what we've got. Yes. All right. I am going to... I need to score something. That's okay. I will do this shape, meaning I will do this one like this, which gets me a light green cactus. And then I will do this shape like this, which gets me a dark green cactus and this owl, which means I can cross off anything from 1 to 5 down here in this section. And I like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which means I get that 2 points down there in the corner. Just so that you can see everything that I've done. Up here I've got 2 crossed off here. Over here I mentioned I marked off a green cactus, a light green cactus, a light green cactus, and a brown cactus, and I triggered the owl, which let me place 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to score 2 points. Over here I had 4, so I used a 2 and a 2, and I've connected those lines. So having done that, we move into the second round, and before we begin the second round, we will rotate this board 90 degrees, and we'll start again. All right. This time, I'm just going to start randomizing things and we'll see how it turns out. So I'm going to sort of flick like this to see what happens. We're getting pretty heavy on that side of the board, so let's do one weak flick. Nope, that was not weak at all. All right, so let's see what we've got here. I could use a reflick if I want to, but I'm not going to. I'm just gonna sort of take advantage of what's out there on the board. Looking carefully, this 5 is on a bonus space, so I like yellow for myself. I don't want purple to be the AI because I really don't want them to overrun this canyon, or sorry, the Cliff Dweller ruins. Yeah. I think this time I'm going to let them have, sorry, I noticed this is rubbing off. I'm going to let them have green and I will take yellow. So we're going to remove the purple discs. Now looking carefully at yellow, because if I want to use a swap ability, I can. And yes, I will, because I don't like this. I don't want them to get too far ahead of me in the ruins. So I'm going to use my swap this time, which means I'm crossing off the swap on my board, means I don't have any swaps left for right now. And I'm going to swap this 4 and this 2. And now we will mark things off. So again, in the Cliff Dweller ruins, the AI is just going to circle a number of spaces equal to the number it rolled, or it flicked onto that space. Next, moving into the canyon, this is a tough one. They've got a 3, a 1, and a 5. So I need to place a 3, a 1, and a 5 down here. I can easily place a 1 right here. That really doesn't hurt me at all. And now I need to place a 3 and a 5, doing my best not to do serious damage. Well, let's do a 3 here. I don't think I'm ever getting all the way over there, so that's fine with me. And then the 5, this works okay for me. I'm just going to sort of keep him confined to that corner and work on the rest of that scoring area. And then finally a 2 in the mud cracks. Yeah, I'll stick onto that same side. There's a 6 and the 5 right there, and that is their scoring set. Okay, now for me, let's follow the same order. So I've got a 4 here. Now I can't cross off anything at the bottom while they have spaces up here that are circled. So I need to cross off 1, 2, 3, 4 up here, which means I don't get to score it all at the bottom, but that's okay for right now. Next, in the canyon, I've got a 2, a 3, and a 5, but that 5 is actually not in the canyon. That's a double rabbit. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but I'm going to put that here to remind me this goes in the mud cracks. So I have a 2 and a 3 in the canyon, 2 being a corner piece and 3 being that sort of S-shaped piece again. I like the 3 right here because it will get me that light green cactus twice. And then I have a 2 somewhere. Yes, I will place the 2 right here, which gets me one of the brown ones. All right, those have been placed. I've got a 5 here, but that was on a bonus, so that means it's double. I have 10 to spend in the mud cracks. So I'm going to spend 3 here, which gets me this line, and this line. And then 3 again, which gets me this line, and this line. So I'm at 6. I have 4 left to spend, and I will. Let's do this 4 because it's far enough away from the stuff that the AI is blocking. So I get those 2. And finally, we've got this 1 down here in the riverbed, which is just going to give me a 1. And I will take, let's take this 1. And that is the end of the second round. So again, we rotate the board 90 degrees and we flick one more time. Okay, so let's see what we've got here. I see a couple things. Green has a double here in owls. Purple has a double over here. I definitely don't want the AI getting purple up here. So I think I'm going to take purple for myself. And I don't want the AI getting a double 5. So I'm going to take purple, give yellow to the AI. So then we do that. The AI starts yellow. We'll start in the Cliff Dweller Ruins with a 3 for the AI. So they're going to circle up here. 1, 2, 3. And next into the canyon with a 5. And I will mark off this 5 up here. Again, there's another AI square there, so that is okay. And then finally, everything else is down here in the creek bed, a 4, a 2, and a 1. So we need to mark off a 4, a 2, and a 1. So the 2 I can do right here, 1, 2. The 1 I will do right here. And the 4, I'm going to come all the way over here to the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, because I don't think I'm going to get to that side of the map. So now my turn, I get a 5 up here in the Cliff Dweller Ruins. So I'm going to cross off 1, 2, 3, and I have 2 more to spend, so I will go 4 and 5. In the canyon, I got a 1, a 3, and a 4. So let's see what we can do with that. I like this for my 3 because I get a discovery bonus and a green cactus. And my discovery bonus, I'm going to take an owl. And we'll hold off. I might use that this turn, I might not. So that was my 3. Got a 1 and a 4 left to place. I will place here my 4, which gets me a discovery bonus again. And I think I will take a rabbit. And I get another rabbit. So we'll come back to that for now, but let me write a 5 here so when I get to the creek, or sorry, the mud cracks, we can use that. So that was my 4. And I get to place a 1 somewhere. I like the light green ones best if I can find one that works, but it does not look like I can reach one with a 1. In that case, dark green's not a problem. Let's do this right here to get one more dark green cactus. All right, then we come down here to the mud. Oh, that was the 1. We come down here to the mud cracks. I've got a 2 plus 5. I've got 7. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and use this rabbit. So now I've got 13. So I'm going to start here with a 5. And that's 5. And another 5 here. And that's 5 and 5 is 10. So I have 3 left to spend, but there aren't any 3s left. So I'm going to check something off down at the bottom. And I'm going to do this one, 1, 2, 3 to get an owl, which means I can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if I'd like to score 4 points. And I could do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to hold off on this owl. We'll come back to that later. So that's the end of the 3rd round. We rotate one more time, and we start the 4th round. I'm going to try and be a little bit more careful this time. Let's see if we can get lots of doubles with any of these. Apparently being careful doesn't make me any better at this game. All right, then let's try and be careful again. Nope. Oh, that's a double. And there's my double lost. Okay. Looks to me like random flicking might do better for me than aimed flicking, but let's see what happens. Yellow. All right. In that case, I don't want the AI to have green, and I like where the yellow ones are, so I'm going to remove the green ones. I will give AI purple, and I will take yellow. But that means AI has everything in the riverbed. So they're going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, no, we're not adding them up. They've got a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I seem to be working this way, so I want to keep that empty. So let's do this. We've got 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, because it branches off from there. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we'll come up from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's the AI for that round. So for me, we start here in the ruins, which is a problem because I only got 2 and it's not enough to get a point. So I definitely need to make sure I get something there in the last round of the game. Moving into the canyon, we've got a 1, a 3. Oh, you know what? Never mind. This 5 is a double for the canyon, which is a 10. So I've got one more there, which gets me 8 and an owl. So let's do the owl before I forget. And again, that owl can be a 1 through a 5. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3 and take that 4. And that was 1 here. So now I have 9 more to place, which will fill in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which gets me another 11 points and a swap. So I'll mark off the swap down here. All right, now back to what we were doing. The canyon, I got a 1 and a 3. So let's figure out where we're putting that now. The 3 fits very nicely right here, which gets me one of each of the regular shaped cactuses. And finally, the 4 in the creek bed. 1, 2, 3, and 4 gets me that 4-pointer, which is nice. And that's the end of round 4. So then we rotate one final time, again playing the short game. We will take our 5th round. Okay, so let's flick and see what happens. I'm going to go with the random flicks again this time because it didn't seem to do very well last time when I did not so random. Sorry, there's one more thing in the rulebook. If it doesn't clear here, you are allowed to flick again. All right, so we got a lot of green over there. I'm not super happy with that. Unless I let the AI take that, which might not be a problem right now. Let's see what we can do. Oops. Sorry, I'm also flicking left-handed, which is probably not the best way for me to play this. And finally, 5. Okay, so let's see what we've got and let's see what we want to do. I seem to be doing okay everywhere. Do I want 8 down there? I don't need 8 in the Cliff Dweller Ruins, but if I swap, I do have one more swap. If I swap that 5 for a 2, which would put a 5 in the creek, which is not, or sorry, in the mud cracks, which is not a problem. I could finish this 5 and do something down there. So that might actually not be a bad idea. So yeah, I'm going to take yellow and I'm going to give green. I don't like, yellow has too much in that area. But green does too. Purple could be nice. No, you know what? I'm going to stick with it. I'll take yellow and I'll give green to the AI. And we'll see what happens. Okay, so green is AI. They start with a 3 in the canyon. So they're going to mark off a 3 shape down here in the canyon, and I will have them do this one right here. At this point, it's not going to matter because it's the last round of the game, and I don't mark anything in the canyons again. And then they get 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in the mud cracks. So we're just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 down there. And now we'll go for me. This one is majority in the mud cracks, so I have 1, 4, 2. But again, I'm going to use my second swap to swap this 5 with this 2. Because now I have 5 in here and only 5, so it's not a waste. And I will mark 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 6 and a reflick, but I didn't use those, so it doesn't matter. I've now got 10 to spend down here, which is a shame because another one would have been nice, but hold on a minute. No, that's fine. All right, so I'm going to use... Yeah, that's a shame. That's fine. I will do 4 here, which gets me these 3. No, that's a mistake, but it's not. It's fine. I will use that 4 to get those 3, and I will use this 5 here to pick up that one. And the last one, I have 1 left, which isn't going to do me any good, so I'll just check down there because. So those are done. Now, before the game is over, I will trigger this owl, which gets me 1 to 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gets me that 10 points. So that is the end of the game. Let's zoom in on the score sheet and I will tally up the final score. All right, so to add up our final score, we're just going to look at each section and total up the total in each section. So in the Cliff Dweller Ruins, I have an 11, a 6, and an 8. So 11 and 6 is 17, and 8 is 25. So I will put a 25 here on the board. Next, in the canyon, counting based on the number of cactuses of each type. For the light green, I have a 19. For the brown, I have a 7. And for the dark green, I have a 19. So 19 and 19 is 38. And 7 gives me 45 points. Sorry, that's in the wrong spot. That should have been the canyon, which is the fox goes here. 45 points. The owl, we look at what I've got circled. 2 plus 1 is 3, and 4 is 7, and 4 is 11, and 4 is 15, and 10 makes 25. And finally down here, we look at what is circled. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the black ones circled. I've got 1 of this sort of dark greenish blue, and I've got 1 of the green ones. So 8 times 2 is 16, plus 4 is 20, plus 6 is 26. So we've got 5 and 5 is 10, and 5 is 15, and 6 is 21. 2, 4, 6, 8, and 4 is 121 points is my total score. Now, while we're down here, I do like to take a look at the components and talk a little bit about those. So let's look at things while we're here. First, I want to start with the board. I do like the way that the board looks. I do like this idea of the sort of recessed area in the middle that is an auto-triggered score. The board, though, itself, there's no negative about it for real, but this is plastic. It's a nice plastic. It's a sturdy plastic, but I don't know. I feel like it could have been nicer if it was wood. It's nice and smooth. It's not hard to flick. They do move nicely across the surface, so no real complaints there. I do notice, however, and I'm curious about this, you can see here that the board itself slots in to these sort of clips. Let me zoom out a little bit more. The board itself slots into these clips. And you can see those clips. And if you look carefully, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but there's tape here. So I'm wondering if in future they might provide new boards that you can swap in and out, take this one out and put a new one in, changing the experience. And if so, I think that's a really clever idea. So I do give you a thumbs up on that potential future expansion idea. Again, it's pretty lightweight. The reason I say that the plastic may have been a poor choice instead of something like wood is because it's light. So if I bump it, it's going to get shifted and things will move. But as long as you're careful, it's not a real concern. Now, the score sheets. The score sheets are big, but each individual zone is small. And I don't mind that. I like the score sheet. I like that it's dry erase. I like that, you know, it's going to be able to be wiped and used again without any problem. Actually, my bigger concern are these markers. I like that they're colored for the player colors. That's great. I like that they have an eraser on them. It's very convenient. But you can see the marker is very thick. And especially like, say, for example, up here in this section, the thickness of the marker for me to draw circles around things and then cross them out is a little bit tricky. And the other issue with the dry erase marker is that because the board is so big and because it's split into different sections, when I'm writing on this section, it's very likely that my hand is rubbing off things down here. And I need to be extra careful to sort of bridge while I'm writing on the board. Now, that's not a major concern, but it is something you need to be careful with. And if you could pick up some colored wet erase markers that require liquid to erase, that might be a good idea. So I would almost prefer to see them include wet erase markers rather than dry erase markers in this game. The other thing about the player boards is they are double-sided, but they are exactly the same on both the front and back of the sheet. And I think that's a little bit unfortunate because, again, it is a dry erase game. So all I need to do is erase and I can play again. Yes, it might save a little time if I want to play twice in a row to just flip it over and use the backside, but I think this was a perfect, opportunity for them to sort of rearrange things or switch things up so that one side is the same for all players and the other side is different for all players, and it would add a little bit of variability into the game. But it's not there, so it's not a negative, but it could have been a bigger positive if they had done something else with the back of the sheets. These discs are nice. They flick very well. They're nice and thick. They're very lightweight, so they move nicely when you flick them. They do have the numbers screen printed right onto the wood. It looks kind of like a sticker, which is a little bit sad because you can see on some of them the circle doesn't match up perfectly with the disc. And with a screen print, it would have been nice that it looked better than just a sticker, because otherwise it could be a sticker, but it's not bad. It doesn't look bad. And again, I prefer the screen printing to the stickers because they're not going to come off. So I like that. The colors are really nice. The fourth color that you don't see here is a light blue color. I do worry with color blindness that it could be an issue. I did do a scan with a colorblind app to see what it looked like. And I did notice that this purple and this blue might be a little bit of an issue with colorblind. It does have a very muted palette, but I wonder if the color choice could have been a little bit wider to make sure that that doesn't cause any issues. The only other thing that comes in the game is this one player or first player marker. It's just a thick token. It looks nice. There's no problem with this. It doesn't need to be anything more than it is, so it is what it is and it's good. The last thing I want to talk about, as I always do, is the insert in the box. So let's take a look. When you open the box, you see an insert that looks like this. All of the markers fit in here. The first player marker fits in there. The discs in a bag, I put them in a bag, but for right now, just to show you, all of the discs go in here. The player sheets fit nicely into this recessed area in the box. The game board goes right on top of that, and everything sits flush with the lid of the box when you put it in. So that means on your shelf, you don't have to worry about anything shifting or going anywhere. That being said, though, I understand why the board is as big as it is. And I understand why it has this plastic frame, because you need this elevated flicking surface. But I almost wonder if there wasn't a better way that this could have been dismantled into a board that folded up and these plastic pieces as clip-on triangles that go on afterwards. Because aside from that and these big player sheets, which could really be cut into 4 different pieces or at least 2 different pieces, this box is really big. And I mean, this first player marker doesn't need all of this space for just that token. These 4 markers don't need this giant space to be put in there. And realistically, this thickness is mostly air. So that means this enormous box is basically only designed to be this size because of the scoring sheets and the game board, which are as big as the box. So I really do think there could have been a better way to break this down into a foldable board and snap on corners. I do think these score sheets may have even been better off as slightly bigger individual sheets, because then you wouldn't have the issue with the marker and it would be a little bit easier to see things. That said, none of this is bad, just some confusing decisions that I think could have been done a little bit better. That being said, meet me back up top and I'll talk about what I think about the game itself. Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the playthrough. Normally I sort of come out right up front and say exactly how I feel about the game, but this time I'm not really going to do that, and that's because I have very mixed feelings on this game. So it's going to take a little bit more precise discussion about what I liked and what I didn't like about the game, but there's a little bit of both here. So I do want to get into both of these things, but I want to focus first on the solo mode because that's sort of what I do. So first thing I want to talk about is the solo mode in this game, and honestly, I will come out and say this, I don't think I enjoy the solo game in here at all. And there are quite a few reasons, and I'm going to talk about them. But the first one you may have noticed simply through my playthrough, and that is the flicking piece of the game, right? This game is designed that I'm flicking discs onto a board and then using those locations where those discs have landed to score on my scoring sheet. And we'll talk more about the scoring sheet and how the game actually plays in a minute. But the flicking portion of the game should be interesting. It should offer a challenge that I'm flicking my discs to get them to certain locations. And I have no doubt that in the multiplayer game that exists. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But strictly focused on the solo game, there's too many discs. If I'm flicking 15 discs, yes, I could take the time to flick the first set of 5 discs in a very strategic manner, hoping to get certain things to unlock them on my scoring card. But then I have to flick 10 more discs, and I sort of have to flick them around my discs, or I could flick the first 5 discs and see where they end up, and then use the second 5 discs to knock those out of the way if I don't like where they are, and then maybe use the third set of 5 discs to try and score what I actually want to score. All of those things are possible, and many of those things are things that you might actually enjoy doing if you sit down to play this game. But for me, there's just too much physical work to flick 15 discs onto the board that I don't think that I will ever sit down and strategically think out every single one of these 15 flicks on the board. And that's a shame because in this game, the flicking should matter. The difference between a flick and right, which what I'm calling this, and a roll and right or flip and right is that I have some agency in what's happening when I flick these discs. Now, granted, that depends on my skill and my ability to flick these discs, but I should have some agency as to where they end up and how that triggers in the scoring on my scoring sheet in the right phase. Whereas in a roll and right or a flip and right, I'm completely up to sort of the will of the randomness of the dice or the card flip. And I was hoping to see more of that here, but in the solo game, I don't really see that. Again, because I don't want to take the time to really think about these 15 flicks, because 5 of them are going to get thrown away anyway. So it almost seems like a waste of time to sit down and think too hard about the flicks themselves. In which case, I can just flick them all randomly, sort of like you saw in my playthrough. But at that point, the flicking might as well just be a die roll, or just hold them up in the sky and drop them on the board and see where they land. Because once they're in the position, there is a decision space there, and I do have to decide which 5 to use for me, which 5 to use for the AI, and which 5 to get rid of the game, and that is an interesting decision. But it's a shame that it's preceded by this sort of random flicking fest or an overly long process of flicking that makes the game take longer than it should for the style and type of game that it is. So the flicking phase in the solo game bothers me a bit. But thinking about the right phase, we move on to the right phase, and I'll talk about the game in general here first before I talk about the solo specifically, because the right phase of this game is where the meat of this game is, and it is what I enjoy most about this game. I do really, really enjoy the 4 different sections. I do enjoy that the Cliff Dweller Ruins is a sort of race to get these sections filled against your opponents. Whoever has the higher number in that section goes first. Whoever triggers each section first gets the higher score and some kind of bonus ability. That's neat, right? Then you've got the canyon, which is sort of a polyomino spatial puzzle, fill in the shapes challenge. I like that a lot as well. You've got the creek bed, where you're looking for very specific numbers so that you're crossing off things you don't care about and circling the numbers or the bonuses that you do care about. That's really cool too. And finally, you've got this 4th one, which is the mud cracks, where you're trying to build this sort of network of things based on a total number. So you are not looking for specific numbers necessarily, but you're looking for specific sort of ranges of numbers, because I want enough to cross off this, And if I have a couple extra left, then I can check off the boxes at the bottom. That's also really neat. And the fact that all 4 of these different puzzles exist in the same game, I like that a lot. I like the different decision spaces and the different thoughts that I have to put into this as I'm placing my things, right? But all of that is triggered by the flicks, which we just discussed doesn't really work in the solo game, at least for me. But the other thing that is interesting to me about this solo mode is the AI. Because the AI is cool in the way that it is trying to block you. But through my experiences in the short game and really even in the normal length game, the AI doesn't put enough pressure on you to really affect the way that you score, because each of these scoring sections has a lot of space. And I'm never going to fill any of them unless I focus a lot and very heavily on that section. And if I focus very heavily on that section, it's very easy for me to flick the AI discs into other sections that don't bother me. So realistically, unless I'm playing the long game, and even in the long game, I'm not 100% sure, but the AI just doesn't feel like it's putting that much pressure on me. But that's not the important thing. The AI is interesting. I like the way that the AI is covering things up to prevent me from covering them, or in the Cliff Dweller Ruins, it's adding those extra spaces that I have to check off that don't even count towards scoring. I like that. But the problem here is this. This is a beat your own high score game, and it's completely a beat your own high score solo game, meaning there's not even a threshold that I'm aiming for to get over to know whether I've won or lost the game. And to me, that's an issue. It may not be to everyone, because everybody has different styles of solo games they like. But for me, I don't like a beat your own high score unless they give me some kind of threshold or goal that I'm aiming to get over. Because I finished this game, my score this time was 121 points, and I don't even know if that's a good number or not. I have zero idea of what range I should be aiming to get into. But more importantly, this is a beat your own score game that has an AI player that's connected to the game, which seems really strange to me, because generally an AI is something you're playing against. You're trying to score more points than the AI, or the AI is trying to hold you back from achieving some kind of goal, but there is no goal here. So the AI is blocking you, but there's no way to even know if you've really been affected by the AI. I mean, if it's a beat your own score, really, you could just play this game with your 5 discs without the AI and just see what the highest score you could get is, and get really good at flicking and use it as sort of a practice for the multiplayer game. And that could be fun, because then you don't have to flick the 15 discs, then you don't have to think too much about it, and if it's really just a beat your own high score, then that works. But that's a shame too, because if you get really good at the game, you'll hit that max point value, and then that's it. So the AI is useful there because the AI will make things a little bit different. It will change things up. It adds a little variability to the game. And it makes it so that you can't just get good at the game and do well every time you play this. But again, without a goal, I don't know what the AI is doing. And it seems strange to me that so much work was put in to develop an AI for this game, but that no work was put into developing some kind of goal or some kind of win condition for the solo mode. And for that reason, with the overly long flicking that doesn't make sense to me in the solo game, and this sort of beat your own score with an AI that may or may not even matter, I cannot recommend this game as a solo game. Now, with that being said, I haven't had a chance to play this as a multiplayer game. But from what I've seen, the way that the flicking works, if I was playing against other people who were flicking against me and trying to knock my discs away from spaces that I really want them to be on, and vice versa, if I can flick my discs to hit other people's spaces and get those knocked off of where I want them to not be, right? That's interesting. And if we're taking turns, I flick 2, you flick 2, I flick 2, you flick 2, then I flick the last one and you flick the last one. With each time we're potentially able to use an ability to reflick one, or after we flicked all 5, we have the ability to swap 2. All of those things become really meaningful in a multiplayer game. And if I only have 5 discs to flick, I have much more agency and much more thought that goes into where am I trying to flick these discs, and if they don't go where I want them to do, what can I do later to fix the problem that they didn't go where I wanted them to go? And I'm fighting against somebody for that Cliff Dweller Ruins that's actually paying attention and actually fighting back against me, and all of those things are cool. And as I said, The writing piece of this, the scoring sheet itself, and the 4 different puzzles that you're doing seem really cool. So I think that there's a lot of interesting decisions and a lot of interesting fun to be had in this game, but it's not there in the solo game. So I do look forward to keeping this in my collection, at least for now. I do look forward to playing this as a multiplayer game and seeing what kind of experience I get out of this, because I would probably recommend this game as a multiplayer game. I do like roll and writes, I do like flip and writes quite a lot, and I do love flicking dexterity games. So the ability to mash the 2 of those together into one game is exciting to me, and I think that there's a fun game in here. It just is a shame that it doesn't come through in the solo mode. And if there's a way to fix that moving forward, that would be great to see, but I don't know if this game is really a game that can be played legitimately as a solo game due to the nature of the game. There's one more thing that I should mention, and that's the rules of the game. The rules that come with the original version of this game are pretty bad. There's a lot of sort of detail that's missing in the rules, and you really have to sort of make assumptions when you're reading the rules. That being said, if you check on BGG right now, there is a new printing or a new version of the rules, and the second version of the rules is much, much better, much, much clearer. It all makes a whole lot of sense. So if you do have an original copy of this game, definitely reach out to the publisher or check on BGG for these PDFs. It seems to me that the publisher might be reissuing rulebooks later in the future, so if you do want a physical copy of one of these rulebooks, definitely reach out to Pandasaurus about it. But otherwise, you can find those rules on BGG, and again, those rules make things so much clearer, so definitely check them out if you need them. But otherwise, again, if you like flicking games, if you like roll and writes, if you like flip and writes, and you're going to play this game multiplayer, I definitely recommend you at least try it out. Check it out, see how it works for you. If you're looking for a solo experience that's dexterity and sort of roll and write scoring situations, you might try this. If you liked what you saw in the playthrough, try it out. But I cannot recommend it. I myself don't think that I will be playing this solo, but I do look forward to playing multiplayer. So I hope that was helpful, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Please like and subscribe below, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.